Hello and welcome to this 30-minute insight session onto the Knowledge Exchange UK conference. So I'm Stuart Wilkinson, the CEO of Knowledge Exchange UK, and we're just going to spend a little bit of time talking about what's coming up at conference, what to look forward to, and some of the details. I'm delighted to be joined by Jen Shawley. Jen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny Shawley. I'm a professor at Manchester Metropolitan University, and I have worked with Knowledge Exchange UK for some time. I've been on the conference organising committee for a couple of years and presented at conference. So delighted to be here to chat about what's going to be an exciting event.
And so this is a recorded session. We do have some people who can ask questions and post questions in the chat, which we'll weave into the discussion. But I suspect this might be seen more as a pre-recorded session on the website. Just before we get started, so the Knowledge Exchange UK conference, if you've never been before, is a great opportunity for the Knowledge Exchange community to come together in one place. This year it's on the 3rd to 4th of June in Edgbaston in Birmingham. And ticket sales close on May the 19th. So we have a program that we can talk about. We are still selling tickets, and we'll launch the app very soon in the next few days so that people can log on to different sections. So that's a little bit of the details. But Jen, just a few sort of starter thoughts about what's your favorite memories of conference, or what are you looking forward to in this year's conference?
Sure. I've got a lot of great memories, actually. I think what's really useful and practical about the Knowledge Exchange UK conference is the networking. You get networking at every conference, but there is something different about it here, I think. There's a real sense when you're in university that doing knowledge exchange can feel out of the norm, and actually bringing people together who do that across the UK creates some really exciting collaboration. So it's genuinely a really enjoyable conference, which you can't say about all of them. This year we've got some amazing stuff. Obviously, we've got Nancy Rothwell giving us a keynote on the industrial strategy. I think, again, the conference has this real mix of real kind of high level policy initiatives and practicality, which I think is really helpful in our day-to-day roles. We've got a whole theme on technology and AI and several workshops on how people are using AI in knowledge exchange, which again should have some really great takeaways from that. We've got a metrics session with Thomas Coates Ulrichsen and team there about the future of KE measurements and therefore impact and how we develop knowledge exchange, which will be great. And of course, David Willits as the final keynote speaker. That's about mission-driven knowledge exchange and technology, which is relevant to all of us. And again, I think that real overview and experience will be hugely useful for people to go away with from conference. But how about you, Stu? Have I taken it? I've talked about many of them. What about you?
No, you have. I think the networking opportunity, the coming together and seeing colleagues that you might not see so often in similar situations is a really strong part of how I've enjoyed conference over the last few years. I think also the ability to put what you're doing in the bigger picture. So when I was working in a university, it was always very helpful to step back from the day job and see how other institutions were doing things, to sort of reflect on the bigger picture of developments in the sector, which, of course, those keynotes that you've mentioned will sort of give that big overview. But then also we have a variety of sort of member-led sessions that sort of give some insight into to what colleagues in different universities are doing across the country, that you can kind of sort of beg, steal, and borrow ideas, or you can often just realize the challenges that everybody's facing, and that sort of normalizes your experience to realize that some of these things are quite hard. And of course, the opportunity to make new connections too. So we talked about networking in terms of catching up with old colleagues and friends, but actually making new connections across the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And from previous conferences, I've actually developed partnerships where we've ended up doing stuff together. As is often the way, you might see people from your own university that you haven't necessarily worked with before or from universities close to you. And it really helps. And I think, especially in knowledge exchange, which is at heart a creative endeavor, you need a little bit of space in your role to actually have thoughts about what you might want to do and to gain inspiration from others. And I think just being a part of this and seeing how other people have managed to do it is really valuable. And as you said, yeah, definitely sharing the challenges. It's really useful to realize and remember that something is challenging, but that you can make waves and you can develop things. And I think that really, really helps. As I say, kind of bookended by these kind of policy focused keynotes and the kind of the strategic thinking, the high level strategic thinking is really useful because it sets everything into context for you that you're doing on a daily basis. So absolutely for those people who've been in the profession for a while, but where it's incredibly useful is for those who might be newer to knowledge exchange to give you that flavour and see how it's done right across the country is really great, I think.
And I think it's that range of perspectives as well. So at conference, we have practitioners in universities, but we also have funders, policymakers, um, uh, colleagues who are working in industry or sort of charitable foundations. All of those perspectives coming together makes it a really rich experience in order to understand how all of these different actors in knowledge exchange sort of can collaborate together to have that ultimate impact and outcome. And I think I've been increasingly aware in my time in this role of the diversity of that membership, of the different actors that we have involved in the Knowledge Exchange UK membership and how that all comes together at conference. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. I think there's also, as well as that diversity of types of organisation, there's also a diversity of universities in there as well and learning from each other. So we've obviously got a really strong tech transfer contingent, which is great, and we've got lots of sessions for that. And then we've also looking at shape disciplines and social enterprise and commercialization in that area. And then some universities who are incredibly new to doing any commercialization activity. And I think that's where things can really click into place, as you say, when you see what other people have done and just to kind of give you ideas, which is really useful. But yeah, absolutely. I think having policy involved. And what's great as well is that these policymakers are coming and want to talk to us as well. They want to talk to everybody who's at the conference and understand what our challenges are to shape what they're doing next as well, which is incredibly valuable and a really good conduit for that. Conference is brilliant for that.
And we're sort of mentioning implicitly the kind of themes that we have at conference. So research and policy, the future of business partnerships, measuring impact and metrics around that, and then the future challenges that we all face. They are sort of threaded through the conference. You've also mentioned the sort of two keynotes. So Nancy Rothwell thinking about the industrial strategy and how that affects knowledge exchange broadly and all of those actors in knowledge exchange, and David Willett's thinking about the future, how the world might look over the coming years, but also how technology can play a part in that. We also have two plenaries that we haven't mentioned so far in this webinar. So one of those plenaries is from UKRI, so talking about UKRI generally, but also some sort of usual updates from Research England about their policy developments. And we're also very fortunate to have a fireside chat with Simon Hepworth, the new Director of Knowledge Exchange, and it will be fascinating to hear his view as he's just taken up that role in the last week or two about how he sees his role at Research England and the role for knowledge exchange in the coming years. And then the second plenary we have, or actually on the programme, chronologically it's the first plenary, is really looking about how you drive change through collaboration in a local ecosystem. So David Coleman and Helen Turner will be giving us some real examples of what it's like to collaborate in an increasingly complex ecosystem with actors coming at it from lots of different perspectives, how this fits in from a local government perspective, from a local business perspective, but also from the innovation side of things too. So I think that will be a really useful balance between the policy narrative and the big picture, but also sort of practical examples of how we can do some of these things and learn lessons and apply them across the UK.
Definitely. And I think, again, that's why it's great that the KUK conference is at a different place every time, that we learn a lot about place, and universities and place are inextricably linked, of course. And so I think particularly that plenary will be fantastic to see how those things have really shaped up in one particular area that has its own geography, its own demographics, its own different types of universities. And again, that kind of case study really helps. But I think when people come, and we've got people traveling from all over the country and beyond to come to this, it's just really great to get a feel for exactly how universities, other organisations are partnering within place. And Stuart and I were just talking before about how things have changed over the past few years, and partnership is absolutely fundamental to doing knowledge exchange and collaboration. And those things are there and people want to interact, but sometimes in our day-to-day roles, which are moving super fast, we don't always get a chance to be able to kind of have those conversations. So again, I think things that are based in that place really help stimulate those thoughts and change to develop more knowledge exchange where we are, where we live.
So I asked you at the start what you look forward to conference. I wonder if there are a few things that we haven't mentioned that you're looking forward to sort of hearing more about. I know when we just talked beforehand, you had a few sort of ideas and suggestions of things that you were really sort of wanting to hear more about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned technology before, and it is, I think it's fascinating to see how these early adopters of different technologies within KE have really used them to drive what it is that they want to do, which is always incredibly useful. But also, we've got the sessions on measuring impact, which sometimes in universities can seem like a task that maybe isn't in those people who do knowledge exchange's gift. But actually, it's hugely important. If we're going to go forward, when we hear from our policymakers, we'll hear about the importance of demonstrating success of what we do. And actually, measuring impact is a real challenge, as those people who are in research know with the ref. Um, but also it's a real opportunity for us to find quite creative ways of understanding how knowledge exchange works, and that's what is indeed exciting about knowledge exchange, that it is different every time you're creating something new, and that's a challenge in itself. But actually learning how others have measured impact so we can show the value of what we do in a fairly traditional world that universities can be, I think will be really, really useful. There's also sessions particularly looking at female entrepreneurship, accessing funding with female entrepreneur academics, with a bit about ICUR in there as well, which again is really exciting to see how things have been achieved in areas that are underrepresented in other ways. So I'm really looking forward. I'm really looking forward to those, and to a lot of the other sessions as well. How about you, Stu? Any other highlights for you?
No, I mean, I'm constantly fascinated by the use of technology and how that can sort of play in. Our world is changing with the use of AI. What does that mean in knowledge exchange? And there'll be a couple of sessions on that. We have a big a number of sessions around shared TTOs. So
Mm,
with the focus on spin outs over the last couple of years, how does that work out if you're a smaller if you've got a smaller activity around spin outs, how can you share expertise around TTA? So it'll be interesting to see those projects feeding back. But there are a couple of panels that I'm particularly interested on. One, we've got a panel around spin outs, the bigger picture.
mm,
So that debate and discussion about spin outs is very much focused and honed in on particular stages of that journey of a spin out. So whether that be the conception of spin outs or proof of concept, but actually it's easy in that to forget that a successful spin out is something that takes years and grows into a successful large company. So one of those panels will think about that journey from how you establish a company right through to what it means to be a successful large company in an ecosystem. Um, and then there's another panel thinking about business partnerships. So
mm.
thinking about the future of business partnerships and what that looks like as this sector evolves, but also as the financial geopolitical climate changes. So again, some international perspectives in that particular panel, which will be quite interesting.
And again, that's the brilliant thing about Knowledge Exchange U Conference, having international perspectives as well, and people want to come from other places to see how we do things, but working out particularly things like business partnerships, which again I think can sometimes be a bit overlooked in a university context, that the difficulty and the challenge in that and the importance of developing small and large business partnerships, I think will be really, really great. And I know that one of those sessions also looks at small specialist institutions, which again, really creative, exciting things and really targeted areas. So again, I think that'll be incredibly useful.
So yes, I mean, there's lots of content, and the program, which is available on the website, gives people a chance to sort of plot their way through that. And we've mentioned some of the highlights. As I said at the upfront, we'll be launching the app soon, so people can sort of pick their way through that series of different streams of content and those keynotes and plenaries. Um, you mentioned upfront, beyond the content, what do you look forward to from a conference? What particular sort of aspects of the non-content driven sort of part of the program?
Yeah, I mean, they're just as important as the content stuff, although content is obviously very important. catching up with people, friends old and new, of course. There are people that I just see at the KUK conference every year, and it's absolutely lovely to catch back up with them, but also developing those new contacts. So there's always, and there is this year, a welcome reception, and then also a dinner as well, which I know this year is going to be less of a kind of formal gala dinner and much more of a kind of free-form networking dinner, which is absolutely brilliant for this kind of audience where people really want to meet, chat through what they've learned that day, but also find people that they haven't spoken to in a long time. So I think that's really great. And there's always this time for reflection, which just being somewhere else at a conference is really, really great and really, really sparks those ideas. So that's definitely something that I think will be fantastic this year as well.
I'm glad you mentioned the dinner because we've kind of been responding to some feedback about how do we enable that networking more. The gala dinners were great, and enabled some networking, but we're really trying to make sure that people can sort of maximize that opportunity to catch up with people in that social setting, alongside the sort of usual opportunities around a conference, to catch up. So yeah, so hopefully that will be really useful and a good development this year. Um, so yeah, so I also, one other key part of the conference as well is the exhibition stall and
Yeah.
stand. So of course, conference wouldn't be possible thanks without our sponsors, and we have a number of we have a number of sponsors. There's a tiny few slots left if only we wanted to sponsor, but actually back to that perspective, they're absolutely key and fundamental to doing knowledge exchange. The kind of organisations that come and want to support that activity, whether they be providing services or advice, or signposting, a whole variety of different sort of things that play into knowledge exchange. So we do have that exhibition side of things where you can get to know those different sponsors, and understand a little bit more about what they offer and how they can help in your day job. So that's another key part of conference. Um, yeah, and yeah, hopefully be a really useful, exciting, vibrant time. Um, have you? Yeah.
I've just wanted to kind of say as well for anybody just to take a really good look at the program that's on the website because it is absolutely packed. There's so much going on, and you'll obviously be able to look at that when you arrive. But I think it is really useful just to have a quick flick through kind of which kind of sessions you'd be really keen to make. Just to make sure that you do that. And yeah, absolutely on the exhibition as well. Again, we've developed partnerships from being there, and there are sponsors that have been there for several different conferences, which proves that they get a lot out of it as well. I think it's just a really nice environment for those discussions.
Yeah, and so I do recommend people sort of make a beeline to contact those organisations and get to know them a bit better in that open opportunity to do that. Um, I think the one thing I'd want to say is conferences are a really important part of our year and of the sector's year, but it fits into the bigger picture of what we're trying to do as well. So we hope that by forming those networks, by finding out who's working on different things, that actually that can continue throughout the year. So we've recently launched our online community, or relaunched our online community, where we hope a lot of those conversations will continue through the year. So if people aren't familiar with that or they haven't caught up with that yet, we've sort of recently relaunched that, and people can go to KE Connect and sort of fill in their profile and then start conversations and quiz colleagues, and share information throughout the year. But obviously, conference is one golden opportunity to do that in person, with a whole variety of people. It's a really special time, a really special moment of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So yeah, I mean, if uh, yeah, I guess there's not much more to say about conference other than to remind people of those kind of key details. So as I said at the start, the conference is the 3rd and 4th of June, in Edgbaston, in Birmingham. Uh, and the app will be launching soon. Ticket sales close on May the 19th. This year, we've also introduced a sort of variety of group discounts. So if you haven't seen those, you can look that up on the website. Um, and of course, after conference, we'll be sort of disseminating some of the news and information about what happened at conference, and continuing some of those discussions and conversations. Um, I feel tempted at this point, Jen, to sort of put you on the spot with one sort of final concluding comment. Um, and we've talked about the highlights, but what do you hope you'll get out of conference this year? What do you hope will be the kind of big thing that you might sort of go back to your office in Manchester following conference, sort of feeling or knowing or thinking off the back of conference?
Well, I'm going to take two and be a typical academic and not do quite what you asked me to do. First one being that policy bit. So to know more about the industrial strategy and to get those cog thinking about how we could really develop around that and push that agenda where we are would be really great. And then also, I mentioned AI a couple of times. I want to go back with real practical, possibly small things that we can start implementing in the team, and that's very much what I'll be taking away this year.
I always find it a great, inspiring sort of few days that kind of
Yeah.
really, send me back full of enthusiasm for what to do next, informed by policy and informed by some of that sort of contextual information that really helps.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you for listening in. Do look at the website if you want more information, and thank you, Jen, for giving us some of your time and some of your experience, but also your involvement in the committee that helps to pull this together. If people are interested in being involved next year, we'd love to have people's input into planning future conferences too.
Absolutely. I'd fully recommend it. It's a really fascinating exercise. But thank you very much for having me and really looking forward to it.